My mother raised me to fear all men and called the cops on my boyfriend for kidnapping me on our date. When I got engaged, she faked a heart attack, created fake ex-girlfriends online, and showed up to my bridal shower in a wedding dress, so I gave her the ultimate reality check. My mother called the cops on my boyfriend for kidnapping me on our date. Growing up, my mom drilled one thing into my head. Romance is a scam that only weak women fall for. Every time I accidentally mentioned a boy from school, she'd lock me in my room for hours, explaining how pregnancy and poverty were my only future if I opened my legs. I remember being 16 when I asked to go to the school dance. I thought we could do something normal for once, like go dress shopping together, or even just help me with my makeup. But no. Instead, she brought me to the living room and forced me to watch 16 hours of true crime documentaries about women who were culled by their partners. I knew deep down that what she was doing was wrong, but I craved her approval more than I craved normal teenage experiences. So I became the daughter she wanted. No dates, no crushes, no prom, just me and mom against the dangerous world of men. Fast forward 10 years later. I'm now 26, living a double life. You see, I'd met Jason at a work conference and we were on the verge of getting engaged. But to my mom, he was my co-worker who helps with heavy lifting. She even liked him in that context. A useful tool, nothing more. I'd gotten creative with the lies. Weekend trips with my boyfriend became mandatory work retreats. Our anniversary dinners were client meetings. I hated the deception, but I convinced myself that once she saw how respectful and kind Jason was, she'd understand this was different. But that fantasy shattered last month. She'd made a surprise visit to my apartment and saw us through the window, his arm around my waist as we cooked dinner together. The next sound I heard was her fist pounding on my door. "Open up. I know what you're doing in there." When I opened the door, her face was purple with rage. "You disgusting slut! Letting this predator touch you! How long has he been touching you?" Jason stepped forward calmly. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Rapist! Get away from my daughter!" She actually lunged at him with her car keys aimed at his eyes. I jumped between them, my whole body shaking. Every emotion hit at once. Humiliation, rage, and a deep sadness that this was happening. I grabbed Jason's hand and we walked to his car, my mother screaming behind us about Stockholm Syndrome and sexual assault. She followed us to the parking lot, dialing 911 and crying that her daughter was being trafficked. As Jason drove us away, I buried my head in my hands. And it's while I was staring out the window contemplating life that I asked myself something. If I was my mom, would I raise my daughter and treat my boyfriend the way she does? The answer made me sick. No mother who actually loved their child would do this. When we finally parked at Jason's place, I made a decision that had been building since I was 16. I was done being her emotional prisoner. We drove back to my apartment where she was still waiting, now sitting on my doorstep with mascara streaming down her face. "Baby, thank God you escaped. I've called Dr. Pee-Pee. He specializes in deprogramming victims. We'll fix what this monster did to your brain." I sighed. "There's nothing to fix, Mom. I love him. We're getting engaged." Her face went from fake concern to pure rage. "Engaged? You stupid little bitch. Just like your aunt who threw her life away for duck. Is that what you want? To end up like her? 3 kids, no money, crawling back to family?" I stared at her blankly. "Aunt Sarah is happily married with a beautiful family," I said quietly. "You're the one who cut her off for not being miserable enough." She stood up, shaking. "I should have never let you work with men. I should have homeschooled you. You should have let me be normal," I interrupted. "But you needed me broken and afraid so I'd never leave you." Her mask finally slipped completely. "Fine. Spread your legs for him. But when you're pregnant and he's gone, when you're diseased and used up, do not come crying to me. You're choosing cuck over your mother." "I'm choosing love over control," I said, before walking inside and locked the door. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, my phone has become a nightmare. 47 missed calls a day. Text messages with articles about women murdered by boyfriends. Photos of pregnant teenagers with "your future" written across them. But I had my own plans, and they were going to change everything. I started by changing all my passwords. Then I blocked her number. I thought that would be enough. I thought she'd get the message and give me space. But I underestimated how far she'd go. I'd underestimated her desperation. The first sign came when I got a Facebook message from someone claiming to be Jason's ex. The profile looked real enough. Photos dating back years. Mutual friends from his hometown. She said Jason had cheated on her, left her pregnant and alone. She warned me to run while I could. The message was long, detailed, almost convincing. My heart dropped. I sat there staring at the message for what felt like hours. Then another ex messaged me. Similar story, different details but same ending. Jason the heartbreaker, Jason the abandoner. This one included screenshots of supposed text conversations. I felt sick, but something didn't add up. These women found me within hours of each other, after I'd just blocked my mom. The timing was too perfect. I showed Jason the messages that night. His face went white. Then he laughed. Not a happy laugh, more like disbelief. He pulled out his phone and showed me something. He'd never even had social media. No Facebook, no Instagram, nothing. He'd always been private that way. We did some digging. The profiles were created last week. The photos were stock images with filters. The mutual friends were all fake accounts too. My mother had spent hours creating an entire fake history, just to break us up. The dedication was almost impressive in its insanity. I thought that was rock bottom, but she was just getting started. The next week I was giving an important presentation at work. Big clients. My boss's boss was there. Everything was going perfectly. My slides were crisp, my delivery confident. Then the conference room door burst open. My mother stood there, tears streaming down her face. She announced to the room that her daughter was having a mental breakdown. She said I needed immediate psychiatric help. She begged them to help her save me from myself. She even had papers in her hand, waving them like evidence. Security escorted her out, but the damage was done. My boss pulled me aside after, said I needed to get my personal life under control. HR wrote me up for the disruption. My coworkers looked at me differently, some with pity, some with suspicion. Water cooler conversations stopped when I walked by. I went home that night feeling defeated. Jason held me while I cried. He said we'd get through this together, but I could see the worry in his eyes. How much more could he take? How much more could I? We ordered takeout, but neither of us ate much. Then things got worse. My landlord, Mrs. Whitman, started doing wellness checks. She'd knock on my door at random times, always with the same concerned look, always asking if I was okay, if I felt safe. Sometimes she'd peer past me into the apartment, looking for signs of trouble. I asked her what was going on. She said my mother had explained everything, how I was in an abusive relationship, how I might be too scared to ask for help. She promised to keep an eye on things, report any male voices or signs of violence. She'd given Mrs. Whitman her personal number for emergencies. I tried to explain the truth, but Mrs. Whitman just patted my hand. She said abuse victims often protect their abusers. She'd been briefed on what to watch for. The condescension in her voice made me want to scream. My own home didn't feel safe anymore. Every footstep in the hall made me jump. Was it Mrs. Whitman? Was she listening? Taking notes? I started playing music constantly to mask our conversations. Then I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Small deposits in my bank account. $50 here, $100 there. The memo lines all said things like, "For my baby's escape fund," or "When you're ready to leave him." They went back weeks. A careful pattern designed to look like secret savings. My mother had been putting money in my account, making it look like I was planning to flee, building a paper trail that I was a victim preparing to run. If anyone investigated, it would support her narrative perfectly. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. I called my bank immediately, my hands shaking as I navigated through the automated menu. The representative who finally answered sounded sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful. They said I couldn't stop the deposits without the sender's information. The money kept coming. Each transaction another piece of evidence in her twisted narrative. I stared at my account balance, watching it grow with funds I never asked for, each deposit feeling like another chain she was trying to wrap around me. Jason suggested we talk to his mother Linda about everything. I'd met her a few times at family dinners and holiday gatherings, but kept things surface level, always deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. Now we needed allies, and Linda had always struck me as perceptive. We drove to her house that weekend, the autumn leaves crunching under our tires as we pulled into her driveway. I was nervous, my stomach churning with anxiety. What if she believed my mother? What if she thought I was too much drama for her son? What if this was the thing that finally made Jason see I wasn't worth the trouble? Linda opened the door with her usual warm smile, wearing a flour-dusted apron that suggested she'd been baking. The smell of cinnamon and apples wafted from the kitchen. We sat in her living room, surrounded by family photos and well-loved furniture. I noticed Jason's graduation photo on the mantel, his younger self beaming with pride. I told her everything, starting from the beginning, from my childhood where love meant constant surveillance to the current harassment that was destroying our peace. She listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or furrowing her brow. Her face grew more concerned with each detail, especially when I described the wellness checks and the money deposits. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, her fingers absently straightening a doily on the arm of her chair. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly in the silence. Then she said my mother had already called her. My heart stopped. She explained that my mother had been very emotional on the phone, told her Jason was controlling and isolating a mentally fragile woman, said I needed help but was too deep in his manipulation to see it. She'd cried about losing her baby to a predator. She'd been very convincing, using all the right words that would terrify any mother. My heart sank to my stomach. I felt Jason tense beside me, his hand finding mine, but then Linda smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. She said she knew her son, had raised him to respect women and recognize healthy boundaries. Plus, she'd noticed how my mother never mentioned specific incidents during their call, just vague accusations and tears. Real concerned parents have details, she said. They talk about specific behaviors that worry them. Manipulators have drama and grand statements but no substance. Linda became our strongest ally from that moment. She started documenting everything with the efficiency of someone who'd raised 3 children and managed a household for decades. She kept meticulous records of my mother's calls, writing down dates, times, and exact quotes. She recorded voicemails on multiple devices. She even hired a lawyer friend to advise us, someone she'd known since college who specialized in family law, just in case things escalated further. They did. One morning, Jason's boss called him into his office before he'd even had his coffee. Someone had phoned in a threat to their security line, said if Jason didn't send his girlfriend home sick that day, there would be violence. The voice was disguised with some kind of modulator, but the message was clear. They'd nearly called the police, and the entire building was on edge. Security guards were posted at every entrance. Jason was almost arrested on the spot. Security was reviewing footage from every camera in the building. HR was investigating, pulling his personnel file and questioning his coworkers. His job that he'd worked so hard for was on the line, all because of a phone call. We spent hours at his office with security personnel, proving he'd been in a different city for a client meeting when the call was made. I sat in the cold conference room, watching Jason explain over and over that he'd been 3 hours away, showing receipts and meeting notes. Security footage from the client's building finally saved him. It showed him 3 hours away at the exact time, shaking hands with clients and presenting proposals. But the stress was wearing on us both. He started looking over his shoulder constantly, checking locks twice before bed. He inspected his car before driving, looking under it with his phone's flashlight. My mother's harassment was poisoning every part of our lives, making us paranoid and exhausted. I found out she'd been attending my apartment building's community meetings through a concerned neighbor who knocked on my door one evening. She told me my mother had been spreading rumors about domestic violence from my unit, claiming she was a concerned parent who heard screaming and crying through the walls. She'd been telling neighbors she feared for her daughter's life. Several people had already complained to management, signing a petition. They wanted me evicted for disturbing the peace and creating an unsafe environment. I had to attend the next meeting to defend myself. I stood in front of 40 neighbors in the community room, my voice shaking as I explained that my mother was lying, that there was no violence in my home, just a woman who couldn't let her daughter go, who saw independence as betrayal. Some believed me, nodding sympathetically. Others Others still looked suspicious, whispering among themselves. The damage to my reputation was spreading like poison through the building. People stopped making eye contact in the elevator. Conversations halted when I walked by. Thanksgiving arrived with its promise of family and gratitude. Jason and I planned a quiet dinner at his place, just the two of us. We needed normal, needed peace, needed to pretend, just for one day, that we were a regular couple. We were cooking turkey and watching football, laughing at the terrible commercials. For a few hours, things felt okay. The smell of sage and butter filled the apartment. Then the doorbell rang. My mother stood there with a man I hadn't seen in 15 years. My father, the one who'd abandoned us without explanation, left without a word when I was 11, taking nothing but his clothes. She had her arm linked through his like they were a couple again, like the years of anger and abandonment had never happened. He looked older, grayer, wearing an ill-fitting suit that suggested this wasn't his idea. She announced with theatrical flair that she forgave him for leaving, said at least he protected his new family from predators. Unlike me, the words hit like physical blows, each one calculated for maximum damage, using my father's abandonment as a weapon. Bringing him here to hurt me on a day meant for gratitude. I could see the manipulation clearly now. She'd probably tracked him down just for this moment. My father looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight and keeping his eyes downcast. He kept glancing at the door like he wanted to bolt. He mumbled something about just wanting to see me, to make sure I was okay after all these years, but I could see the truth in his hunched shoulders and darting eyes. She'd manipulated him too. Probably told him the same lies about Jason, played on whatever guilt he carried about leaving. I told them both to leave, my voice stronger than I felt. I closed the door in their faces, hearing my mother's protest through the wood, but the damage was done. Seeing him again, being used as a pawn in her game, it broke something in me. I cried for hours that night, grieving the father I'd lost twice now. Jason just held me, not knowing what to say, his own anger at the situation simmering beneath his gentle touch. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes but surprising clarity. This wasn't about protecting me. This had never been about my safety or well-being. This was about control, about punishment for daring to love someone else. She'd rather destroy me than let me be happy. That clarity helped, made me stronger. I could see the pattern now, stretching back through my entire life. We decided to announce our engagement publicly. No more hiding, no more letting her control our narrative. We posted on social media with a photo of the ring Jason had been carrying for months. We told our friends at a dinner party, watching their faces light up with genuine joy. We started planning openly, subscribing to bridal magazines and creating Pinterest boards. If she wanted a war, we'd stop playing defense. She faked a heart attack within hours of our announcement, posted on Facebook that the stress of my choices was literally culling her. She tagged all our mutual acquaintances, distant relatives, and even some of my high school friends she'd somehow stayed connected with. The post got dozens of concerned comments, people reaching out to ask if I knew my mother was in the hospital. Some scolded me for putting her through such stress. I called the hospital she claimed to be at, no patient by her name. Called 3 more to be sure, each receptionist confirming they had no record of her. She was lying, creating drama for sympathy, making herself the victim in my engagement story. The manipulation was so transparent once you saw the pattern. Every joy in my life had to become her tragedy. We started visiting wedding venues, determined to make it real. The first 3 venues called to confirm our appointment, then canceled within hours. Said there'd been a mix-up with their booking system. The 4th venue manager pulled me aside after our tour. She said someone called claiming the wedding was off, that they were being scammed by people posing as an engaged couple. The caller had been very convincing, crying about her daughter being conned. My mother was sabotaging our wedding planning. She'd discovered our venue research by following my social media activity through fake accounts. We started using fake names for appointments, feeling ridiculous giving aliases to wedding planners. We created a separate email account, used Jason's work address for deliveries. Felt like criminals planning our own wedding. The absurdity would have been funny if it wasn't so exhausting. Then came the insurance incident. I got a call from my health insurance on a Tuesday afternoon. They said someone was trying to add me back as a dependent on their plan. The paperwork claimed I was mentally incompetent, needed a guardian to make medical decisions. The forms had my mother's signature all over them, along with what looked like forged medical documents. I had to prove my mental competence to keep my own insurance. I sent pay stubs showing consistent employment, work evaluations praising my performance, had my boss write a letter on company letterhead attesting to my mental fitness. The insurance company eventually dropped it, but the message was clear. She'd try to control me through any system she could access. No institution was off limits in her campaign. Jason's ex-coworker Melissa reached out with something shocking. She'd been at a coffee shop downtown when a woman approached her. My mother had somehow figured out who she was and offered her $5,000 in cash to seduce Jason, to break us up from the inside, make it look like he was cheating, create evidence of his infidelity. Melissa had the presence of mind to record the whole conversation on her phone. My mother's voice was clear as day, offering cash for home wrecking, describing Jason's supposed weaknesses. Melissa said she played along to get evidence, pretending to consider the offer, then immediately told Jason. She thought we should know how far this had gone. She also mentioned my mother had clearly been following her, knowing her schedule and regular coffee shop. We now had proof of her trying to sabotage our relationship, real evidence of her manipulation that went beyond he said, she said. But what could we do with it? Going to the police felt extreme. We just wanted her to stop. We wanted to live our lives without constantly looking over our shoulders. My therapist, Dr. Stevens, became crucial during this time. I'd started seeing her years ago for general anxiety, never telling my mother, of course. Dr. Stevens documented everything as I brought each new incident to our sessions. She said my mother's behavior was pathological, classic narcissistic control patterns mixed with what seemed like delusional thinking. The escalation worried her. She helped me see the cycles clearly. How my mother created crisis to pull focus whenever I reached a milestone. How she projected her fears onto me. How she'd rather destroy than let go. The sessions were hard but necessary. I was finally understanding the depth of dysfunction I'd grown up in. The way love had been weaponized my entire life. Then my mother filed for power of attorney over me. The legal documents arrived on a Thursday. She claimed I was mentally ill, unable to make rational decisions, being manipulated by a predator. She'd compiled her fake evidence into a compelling narrative. The deposits showing financial control, the wellness checks showing concern, the concerned family narrative from various relatives she'd convinced. Dr. Stevens had to write a formal evaluation for the court. She testified that I was completely mentally sound, that the concerning behavior came from from my mother, not me. She provided session notes spanning years. The filing was rejected, but the audacity still shocked me. She'd tried to legally control my life, to take away my autonomy through the court system. One day we came home to find our apartment door unlocked. My heart raced as we entered carefully. Nothing was stolen, but every photo of Jason and me was gone from the walls, from shelves, from the refrigerator, replaced with old mother-daughter photos, some I'd never seen before. Pictures of us at parks when I was young, museums, birthdays, all from before I dared to date, before I dared to grow up. A note on the coffee table in her handwriting said she was reclaiming her baby, that these were the only photos that mattered, the ones from before I was corrupted. She'd been in my home, touched our things, sat on our furniture, violated our space. We changed the locks that night and installed a security system the next day. She escalated to Jason's workplace next. His boss got emails with fake screenshots, threatening messages supposedly from Jason, violent, graphic threats that looked disturbingly real. IT had to trace them, working through the night. They proved they were created on her computer. Her IP address clearly linked to every message. The forensic evidence was undeniable. The evidence was piling up. Her harassment documented from multiple angles. But she kept going, like she couldn't stop herself. Each scheme more desperate than the last. Each failure making her more frantic. The intervals between incidents grew shorter. My bridal shower was supposed to be small. Just Linda and some work friends at a quiet tea room. A normal celebration. We'd kept the location secret. Only told people the morning of. Sent the address by text an hour before. But she'd found out by bribing a mutual acquaintance who worked at the tea room. She showed up in a wedding dress. An actual white wedding dress with a veil and train. Announced to everyone present that she deserved to wear white. She'd stayed pure for her daughter. Saved herself from men's corruption. The other guests stared in shock. Linda had to physically block her from entering while someone called security. Security removed her as she clutched at the doorframe. But not before she screamed about being the only one who truly loved me. That everyone else was fake. That they'd all abandoned me like my father did. She knew exactly which wounds to target. Which insecurities to exploit. Even being dragged away, she was calculating her words for maximum damage. That was the final straw. Linda had been building a case with her lawyer friend Roger for months. We had recordings, documents, witness statements from neighbors, co-workers, and venue managers. Proof of harassment from multiple sources. It was time to take legal action. To stop playing defense and start protecting ourselves legally. The restraining order paperwork was thick as a novel. Each incident cataloged with dates and evidence. Each threat documented with witnesses listed. Roger said we had one of the strongest cases he'd seen. The pattern of escalation was clear. The judge would have to act. No reasonable person could see this evidence and not recognize the danger. The restraining order hearing was set for the following week. I spent days organizing all our evidence into a binder that looked like a phone book. Police reports, text messages, witness statements from Linda and Melissa, the recording of her trying to bribe someone to seduce Jason. My hands shook as I paperclipped each section. This was really happening. The morning of the hearing, I threw up twice from nerves. Jason made me toast and ginger tea, rubbing my back as I sat on the bathroom floor. We drove to the courthouse in silence. Linda met us there with Roger, a tall man with kind eyes who'd been reviewing our case for weeks. He said we had everything we needed. The evidence was overwhelming. My mother showed up without a lawyer. She wore a conservative black dress like she was going to a funeral. She kept trying to make eye contact with me across the courtroom. I stared at my hands instead. Roger presented our case methodically, each incident building on the last. The judge's face grew more concerned with each piece of evidence. When it was my mother's turn to speak, she cried about losing her baby. Said she was just trying to protect me from making the biggest mistake of my life. The judge cut her off. Asked if she denied making the false reports. If she denied breaking into my apartment. If she denied trying to bribe someone to seduce my fiancé. She couldn't deny any of it. The evidence was right there. The judge granted the restraining order immediately. 500 feet minimum distance. No contact through third parties. No showing up at my workplace or home. The order would last 2 years with possibility of extension. My mother wailed when he read the terms. Said I was culling her. That I'd regret this when Jason showed his true colors. Security escorted her out as she screamed about maternal rights. I sat there feeling numb. It was done. Legal protection finally in place. But instead of relief, I just felt empty. This wasn't how mother-daughter relationships were supposed to end, with restraining orders and security escorts. We went back to wedding planning with new energy. Changed venues one more time to be safe. Used passwords for all our vendors. The florist thought we were paranoid until we explained the situation. Then she shared her own story about a controlling mother-in-law. Said we were smart to protect ourselves early. 3 weeks before the wedding, Jason's mom Linda called with news. My mother had shown up at her house at midnight, banging on the door, demanding to talk mother to mother. Linda had called the police immediately. They arrested my mother for violating the restraining order. She'd been so focused on the order keeping her away from me, she forgot it included harassment through family members. The police report said she'd been carrying a box of my baby photos. Wanted to show Linda who I really was before Jason corrupted me. Like baby pictures would somehow prove her point. The officer noted she seemed disconnected from reality. Kept insisting she had a right to save her daughter. They held her overnight before releasing her with a court date. I had to buy a wedding dress in secret. Paid cash. Used a fake name for alterations. The seamstress probably thought I was having an affair or something. But I couldn't risk my mother finding out where I'd bought it. Couldn't risk her showing up and causing a scene. Every happy moment had to be protected like a state secret. My bachelorette party was at Linda's house for safety. Just close friends and family who understood the situation. We played silly games and drank wine. For a few hours, I felt normal, like any other bride celebrating with her friends. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was the psychiatric hospital. My mother had been admitted after showing up at my old elementary school. She'd been telling the staff she needed to warn them about predators targeting former students. When they asked for specifics, she'd broken down sobbing about losing her baby to a manipulator. The school called for a wellness check. The officers took one look at her state and brought her in for evaluation. The doctor said she was in crisis, but not actively dangerous to herself or others. They'd keep her for 72 hours of observation. He asked if I wanted to visit. I said no. Felt guilty about it, but held firm. She needed help I couldn't give. Professional help that had nothing to do with me. Maybe this would finally get her the treatment she needed. She was released the day before my wedding. I only knew because Roger called to warn us. Said to be extra vigilant. People in crisis often escalate around meaningful dates. dates. We hired off-duty police officers for wedding security, gave them her photo and car information, felt like preparing for war instead of a wedding. The morning of my wedding, I woke at 5 a.m., couldn't go back to sleep, kept imagining all the ways she might try to ruin it. Jason was staying at his brother's place for tradition. I missed him, needed his steady presence. But Linda showed up at 6 with coffee and pastries, said she'd stay with me all day, be my security blanket. The hair salon had been warned about potential disruption. They locked the doors behind us, only let in people on the approved list. When those police officers showed up saying someone called about a woman being held against her will, the salon owner was ready, showed them our security preparations, explained the situation. They took notes and left quickly. Just another false report to add to the pile. My makeup artist had to start over after I cried. Not sad tears, frustrated ones. That even on my wedding day, she couldn't just let me be happy. Couldn't let one day be about something other than her fear and control. The other bridesmaids rallied around me, brought tissues and jokes and mimosas, reminded me that in a few hours, I'd be married to the man I loved. Nothing else mattered. We arrived at the venue through the back entrance. Security guards were stationed at every door. Roger was there with copies of all the legal documents, ready for anything. The photographer seemed confused by all the security until someone explained. Then she promised to keep an eye out too. Said she'd photographed a wedding where an ex showed up. Knew how quickly things could go sideways. Guests started arriving an hour before the ceremony. Each one checked against the list. No plus ones without prior approval. My cousin Dennis texted that everything looked beautiful, that the flowers were perfect, and the string quartet sounded amazing. I stayed hidden in the bridal suite. Didn't want to risk being seen if she was lurking somewhere. Then Linda knocked on the door. Said someone was here to see me. My heart stopped, but she was smiling. It was my dad. He looked older, grayer, wearing a proper suit this time. He'd driven 3 hours to be here, to walk me down the aisle if I'd let him. He said he was sorry about Thanksgiving, that he'd been manipulated too, that he wanted to do one thing right as my father. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds, then said yes, not for him, for me, for the little girl who'd wondered why daddy left, who'd blamed herself for not being lovable enough. This wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was something, a tiny stitch in a massive wound. He waited outside while I finished getting ready. 20 minutes before the ceremony, security radioed that she'd arrived. Same wedding dress from the bridal shower, same veil, same delusional belief that this was about her. She marched toward the front entrance like she had every right to be there. The guard stopped her at the edge of the parking lot, showed her the restraining order, told her to leave immediately. She started her usual performance, screaming about saving her baby, about predators and manipulation, about her rights as a mother. But the security team had dealt with difficult people before. They stood firm, didn't engage with her rants, just kept repeating that she needed to leave or they'd call the police. That's when she spotted Dr. Stevens walking in, started screaming that the therapist was a fraud, that she'd been paid off by Jason's family, that real doctors would see the truth. Dr. Stevens just nodded to security and kept walking, didn't give her the reaction she wanted. The lack of engagement seemed to make her angrier. The police arrived within minutes. They knew the situation from all the previous calls, approached her calmly but firmly. She was under arrest for violating the restraining order. Again, she had the right to remain silent. Anything she said could be used against her. The familiar words of arrest for a sadly familiar situation. As they cuffed her, she screamed loud enough for the whole venue to hear. Said I'd regret this. That when Jason hurt me, she wouldn't be there. That I was choosing him over the woman who gave me life. That I was already dead to her. The words echoed across the parking lot. Guests pretended not to notice, but everyone heard. They put her in the patrol car as our string quartet played. The contrast was surreal. Beautiful music floating through the air while my mother was arrested in the parking lot. The photographer later told me she got a picture of the arrest through the window. I asked her to delete it. Some memories don't need preserving. My dad knocked on the door 5 minutes before go time. Asked if I still wanted him to walk me down the aisle after all that drama. I said yes. Told him this was exactly why I needed him. To show that family could also mean support. That DNA didn't automatically equal dysfunction. He teared up a little, offered me his arm. The ceremony itself was perfect. No disruptions, no drama, just me and Jason promising to love each other forever. Linda cried in the front row. My work friends smiled from their seats. Even my dad looked proud. For 30 minutes it was just about us, about our love, about our future, everything I dreamed it could be. During the reception, Roger pulled me aside, said the prosecutor was adding charges for this violation. With her previous arrest and the psychiatric hold, she was looking at real jail time. Maybe 6 months, maybe more if she kept violating the order. Asked if I wanted to write a victim impact statement. I said I'd think about it. We danced and ate and celebrated until midnight. People gave speeches about love and commitment. No one mentioned the arrest. The elephant in the parking lot that everyone politely ignored. Jason's brother made a joke about security being tight. That was the only reference to the day's earlier drama. I was grateful for the normalcy. Our honeymoon was to Hawaii. 2 weeks of beaches and hiking and no cell service. We'd told no one except Linda where we were staying. Changed our flights last minute just to be safe. Paranoid maybe, but we needed real peace. Time to just be newlyweds without looking over our shoulders. When we got back, 17 voicemails waited. All from the same number, the jail. She'd been calling collect every day. The automated system asking if I'd accept charges. I deleted them all without listening. Set my phone to block collect calls. Drew another boundary in cement. She'd made her choices. Now she had to live with them. The victim impact statement was harder to write than I expected. How do you summarize a lifetime of control disguised as love? How do you explain the weight of constant surveillance? The exhaustion of hiding normal human emotions? I wrote 17 drafts before settling on something simple. Just facts. Just impacts. Just truth. Her sentencing was on a Tuesday. I didn't go. Sent the statement with Roger instead. He said she represented herself again. Told the judge this was a miscarriage of justice. That mothers had rights. That she was being persecuted prosecuted for loving too much. The judge didn't buy it. 6 months in county jail, 2 years probation after. Mandatory therapy twice a week. I thought I'd feel relieved when Roger called with the verdict. Instead, I just felt sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that she couldn't see what she'd become. Sad that love had been so twisted in her mind that she'd rather go to jail than let me be happy. But underneath the sadness was something else. Freedom. Real freedom. For the first time in my life. 6 months passed quickly. Jason and I settled into married life. Got promoted at work. Adopted a golden retriever named Biscuit. Started trying for kids. Normal married people stuff. Every ordinary day felt extraordinary. Grocery shopping together was a joy. Cooking dinner was an adventure. All because I could do it openly. Without lies. Without fear. She got out on a Thursday. Roger called to warn me. Said she'd been a model prisoner. Attended therapy groups. Seemed calmer. But to stay vigilant. Sometimes jail made people reflect. Sometimes it just made them angrier. We installed new security cameras just in case. Changed our routine slightly. Stayed alert but not paranoid. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Her handwriting on an envelope with the therapist's return address. I stared at it for an hour before opening. Jason offered to read it first. But I needed to do this myself. Needed to face whatever manipulation waited inside. My hands barely shook as I opened it. The letter was short. Just one paragraph. Said therapy was helping her understand things. That she'd been wrong. That fear had made her controlling. That she wanted to apologize but understood if I wasn't ready. Signed simply, Mom, with no demands or guilt trips. I read it 5 times looking for the hook, the manipulation, but it seemed genuine. I didn't respond for a month. Needed time to process, to decide if I wanted any contact at all. Jason supported whatever I chose. Said I'd survived the worst already. Whatever came next, we'd handle together. His faith in me made me braver. Made me consider possibilities I'd written off. Finally, I wrote back. One line like Roger suggested. Clear boundaries from the start. When you can be happy for my happiness, we can talk. Sent it through the therapist. No return address. No opening for her to show up uninvited. Just a simple test. Could she actually be happy for me? Or would this trigger another spiral? 3 years of silence followed. She made no further attempts during her therapy. I had a son. Named him after Jason's grandfather. Posted pictures online without fear. Lived my life openly. Sometimes I'd wonder about her. If therapy was working. If she'd finally found peace. But mostly I just lived. Raised my son with gentle boundaries. Showed him love meant freedom, not control. Then the therapist reached out. Said my mother had made significant progress. Was ready to attempt contact if I was willing. Suggested a meeting in a public place. Controlled environment. Safe for everyone. I thought about it for weeks. Asked Jason, asked Linda, asked my own therapist. Everyone said the same thing. Only if I wanted to. Only if it would help me, not her. I agreed to one meeting. A park with good visibility. Lots of people around. Jason would come for support. 1 hour maximum. Clear boundaries from the start. If she crossed any line, we'd leave immediately. No second chances. The therapist would facilitate if needed. Every precaution in place. She looked different. Older, yes, but also calmer. The frantic energy that always surrounded her was gone. She sat on the bench without fidgeting. Waited for me to speak first. A small miracle considering she'd never let silence exist between us before. I could see the therapy's influence in her stillness. We talked carefully. Like strangers getting acquainted. She asked about my work. I asked about her therapy. She mentioned joining a support group for parents with attachment issues. Said it helped to hear other stories. To realize her fears had stolen what she'd tried to protect. The self-awareness shocked me. This wasn't the mother I knew. When I introduced my son, she cried. Real tears, not manipulation. Asked if she could say hello. I said yes, but stayed close. Ready to leave if needed. She told him he had beautiful eyes. Said he was lucky to have parents who loved him. Didn't try to hold him or claim him. Just observed from a respectful distance. We meet monthly now. Always in public. Always with boundaries. She's learning to be a grandmother slowly. Asks permission before giving gifts. Respects when I say no. Doesn't push for more time or access. It's not perfect. May never be. But it's something. A careful dance of reconciliation. 2 steps forward, 1 step back.